In the 4th year of my marriage to Blake, I got a divorce from him as agreed. The custody of Nathan was given to the Blake family. And I didn't fight for it. Blake sneered with a twitch of his lips. Jocelyn, you only want money and don't even want your child. You're more heartless than I thought. I turned a deaf ear to him. After reading the agreement carefully, I asked him, if I give up the right to visit Nathan, can you give me more money? Also, Nathan doesn't recognize me as his mother. The one he recognizes is Chloe. With a hint of sarcasm, I turned around and left while Blake was in a daze. I won't go to your wedding with Chloe. Although you didn't even think about inviting me. But it doesn't matter. We won't see each other again for the rest of our lives anyway. I got the money and the divorce certificate. I threw away the SIM card of my phone. Took only my bank card and ID card. And flew to City D alone. This was the place I could find that was the furthest from my current city. Before I left, I received a message from the butler. He said that the young master had been crying and wanted to find his mother. I was stunned for a moment and replied directly, "Don't look for me. Look for Chloe. She's the woman that he and his father both recognize." After saying that, I locked the screen and turned off the phone. Nathan has a mother he likes. But it's not me. His biological mother. I raised him for 4 years. But it seemed like I had raised an enemy. I searched through recipe books and carefully prepared nutritious meals for him. But he said they were not as delicious as the KFC that Chloe bought for him. I arranged sports classes for him to cultivate a hobby, but he held the game console and cried loudly, saying that Chloe would play games with him. He didn't write a single word of his homework. I was so angry that I couldn't help hitting his palms twice. He glared at me and said, "You can't compare to Chloe at all. You're not good to me at all. They all say that you married Dad for money. I don't want a woman like you to be my mother." Just 3 days ago, I confiscated the game console that Chloe gave him again and asked him to do his homework obediently. He asked me with great caution, "If you die, can I let Chloe be my new mother?" He was indeed still a child. Even if I didn't die, he could have a new mother. Children say whatever comes to their mind, and their words often represent their true feelings. I closed my eyes, and the past events were like a slow knife cutting my flesh, gradually tormenting my heart. My feelings for the Blake family had already been completely worn away by these two father and son. I sat on the plane and took out my wallet to confirm my documents. Having a bank card and an ID card gave me the confidence that I wasn't afraid no matter where I went. However, I found a photo ID in the interleaver of the wallet. And I was stunned. This was Blake at the age of 18. He had a delicate appearance. And there was a hint of nobility between his eyebrows. 8 years ago, I first came to the Blake family. My parents had already divorced. And after my grandmother passed away, Grandma Blake took me home because she thought I was pitiful. She used to be my grandmother's best friend when they were young. And now she loved me because of her affection for my grandmother. In the hall of the Blake family, I met Blake for the first time. He was the most handsome person I had ever seen in my life. "Jocelyn?" He pronounced my name slowly and gracefully. And my heart was pounding so hard that it seemed to jump out of my chest. Just by calling a name, he made it sound better than anyone else. "Wearing such a braid in this day and age is really tacky," he said, looking me up and down with disdain. "And you're tacky too." The young man's clean, leather shoes and cuffs all spoke of his noble status. I grew up in the countryside and had to do farm work. The soles of my shoes were stained with mud, and the cuffs of my clothes were yellow. No matter how much I washed, I couldn't get them clean. Driven by my pride, I gritted my teeth and almost wanted to shrink myself. As soon as Chloe, who came to play in the Blake family, entered the door, she opened her eyes wide and looked at me. Blake, who is this?" "A bumpkin from the countryside. Come on. I'll take you to the amusement park today." After Blake left, there were a lot of 1-inch photos with a blue background scattered on the table. The maid said that those were the photo IDs that the young master needed for college. There were too many of them. And they all needed to be cleared away. I don't know why, but I quietly picked up one. After looking around to make sure no one was there, I carefully hid the photo ID in my pocket. That became the most unspeakable secret of my girlhood. Blake didn't hate me from the beginning. On the day I transferred to a new school in my senior year of high school, the school uniform ordered by the Blake family hadn't arrived yet. The butler reminded me to wear a shirt to report to school. But they didn't know that I only had one shirt. And I had worn it for 5 years. It was all wrinkled. The collar couldn't stand up at all. And there were yellow stains that couldn't be washed off. Living under someone else's roof, I was too ashamed to speak up. I just washed it over and over again, praying that I could wash all the stains away. Blake passed by, furrowed his handsome eyebrows, and casually threw a shopping bag at me. I bought this for Chloe. But she thought it was tacky. So I'll give it to you. Anyway, it would be thrown away otherwise. That was the first time I wore such a clean shirt. And I had a bit more confidence when I introduced myself. I wanted to thank him. But when I got home, I saw Chloe holding Blake's arm and muttering a few words in my direction. Blake found it funny. Why are you jealous of someone like her? As I passed by, I heard Chloe's sarcasm. You treat the clothes I don't want like a treasure. What kind of trash bin are you? I saw her stealing your photo ID last time. She's really a pervert. Could she be secretly in love with you? Blake patted her head to comfort her while looking at me coldly. She doesn't deserve it. I lowered my head and said sorry, almost dying of shame. I thought that my life and Blake's would never intersect again. But I didn't expect for years later. She broke up with Blake. And Blake drank heavily every day, losing his mind. I passed by Blake's room and went in to deliver some documents to him. There were a lot of beer cans scattered at the door. I hesitated for a moment, but still knocked on the door and went in. The moment Blake saw me, he showed a surprised expression. Chloe? I was just about to open my mouth to explain. But he held me tightly in his arms. I knew it. You didn't abandon me, did you? I struggled desperately. Blake. You've mistaken me for someone else. But he kissed me without asking for an explanation and used all his strength to keep me from leaving. It was pouring rain outside the window. He called out another woman's name and forced himself on me. When I woke up the next day, Blake frowned and smoked a cigarette. His expression when looking at me was full of disgust. Jocelyn, when look on my obsessed. How can you be so despicable? At that moment, even though I was covered by the quilt, I felt like I had nowhere to hide. I suddenly realized that what Chloe had scolded me for was right. The shirt she didn't want ended up with me. And the man she didn't want ruined me. Chloe, I became the trash bin of your life. Jocelyn? The surprised voice of a man made me stunned for a moment. I turned my head and saw a face that I hadn't seen for years. Ryan. My college classmate. He smiled kindly, showing some joy. What a coincidence. You're also going to City D? He sat down next to me. And during our conversation, we found out. It was really a coincidence. Not only were we sitting next to each other, but the places we were going to were only 2 streets apart. I've taken over a homestay in City D. I just came back from the army and plan to do some small business there. What about you, Jocelyn? I replied indifferently. I just got divorced and want to relax. What about the child? I don't have a child. I used to have one. But now I don't. He nodded. And with his eyes lowered. I didn't know what he was thinking. Suddenly, a pair of small hands climbed up Ryan's leg. Dad. Only then did I notice that there was a child sitting on the side blocked by Ryan. He had big eyes and was very quiet. He was so quiet that I didn't even notice his presence just now. I couldn't help but be curious. Your son? Ryan's face turned red instantly. Leo. Quickly say hello to Jocelyn. The little boy looked me up and down and obediently called me Jocelyn. But while Ryan was going to the toilet, he suddenly grabbed my hand, blinked his big eyes, and asked me, Jocelyn, are you my mother? I was stunned. What? He answered seriously, Dad said I don't have a mother. But I don't believe it. Everyone else has one. Dad likes you very much. He has never talked so much to anyone else. You have the surname Yao. And I also have the surname Yao. Are you my mother? My face turned red instantly. Nathan didn't like calling me mom at all. Like Blake. He liked to refer to me as she. I went to the kindergarten and to attend the parents' meeting for him. He stuck out his tongue secretly behind my back. I don't want her to come. It's so embarrassing. I wish Chloe could come. Even the kindergarten teacher couldn't stand it and scolded him a few words. Then she looked at me with pity, Nathan's mother. I think the child's family education needs to be adjusted. I smiled bitterly. Didn't I know that? In the year I graduated, I had a wild night with Blake and got pregnant with Nathan. Blake was forced to marry me. And since then, my life has revolved around Nathan. Nathan was born in winter. They all said that babies born in winter are quiet. But Nathan wasn't quiet at all when he was a baby. He was very naughty and liked to kick around in my belly. Blake wasn't there when I felt the fetal movement. I apologized to the baby in my belly again and again, sorry. I didn't find a father who loves you. So mom will love you twice as much and make you the happiest baby in the world. Nathan was indeed very happy. But not because of me. As soon as he was born, the Blake family bought a high-value trust fund for him, ensuring that he would never have to worry about food and clothing for the rest of his life. He had the capital to be willful. As long as he was unhappy, he could smash and break anything. Because there was always something new waiting for him. When he smashed the unknown number of mobile phones because of his temper tantrum, I threatened him, if you always lose your temper when you're unhappy, no one can stand you. Mom will leave too. But he looked indifferent, and his expression was very similar to his father's. Chloe said that you're just a beggar staying in the Blake family. Begging for food in the Blake family. You can't possibly leave. You're too reluctant to. You gave birth to me just to stay in the Blake family. Don't try to deceive people with this trick. My heart gradually grew cold and could no longer warm up. Because I was hurt thoroughly enough. I left resolutely enough. Nathan. I can't go back anymore. And I don't want to be your mother anymore. Anyway, heading full visitation. When I'm gone, there will be a new mother waiting for you. When Ryan came back, he happened to see Leo pestering me and calling me mom. His face instantly turned red all the way to the roots of his ears. Leo, don't talk nonsense. Leo raised his head and retorted in a childish voice, Dad, if I'm not Jocelyn's child, then why don't I have the same surname as you? But I have the same surname as her? Ryan flicked his forehead, hugged him in his arms, and coaxed him to sleep. Leo stuck his head out and looked at me with his big eyes blinking. My heart immediately softened. After Leo fell asleep, Ryan gently patted his back and explained, his father was like comrade in arms when I was in the army. Later, he died in a car accident. This child was entrusted to me. I'm not very good at taking care of children. I didn't know he had so many things on his mind. My heart stirred. And I took out a safety amulet from my wallet. I got this amulet in the largest Buddhist hall in City A in the year when I gave birth to Nathan. It is said that it can bless a child to have a smooth life. I put it into Nathan's pockets several times. But he threw it away. He stepped on it with a look of disgust, it's so tacky. The toys Chloe gave me are all limited edition in the world. It's so embarrassing for you to ask me to take this out. At this moment, Ryan took the safety amulet seriously and examined it carefully. He held the thing in his palm, as if he had obtained a precious treasure, with a sincere expression, thank you. I will let Leo carry it with him. City D is a tourist city. And there are homestays everywhere. According to the address I booked online, I finally found the store I booked in an alley. As soon as I entered the door, I was required to pay an additional 500 yuan for accommodation and meals. I didn't understand. I have already paid the fee online. The boss was smoking a cigarette and blew out a smoke ring. That's just the deposit. You haven't paid the balance yet. This is completely a tyrannical clause. I was angry for a moment and didn't want to swallow this grievance. Then I'll change the store. Sure. The boss pointed with his hand. Go out and see for yourself if anyone else on this street will take you in. The person next to him chimed in, sister. Even if you go to other stores, you still have to pay this 500 yuan. Why do you have to offend us? I understood in my heart that I had run into a shady store. I tried to stay calm, forced charging. Aren't you afraid that I'll call the police? 3 burly men with their upper bodies bare directly kicked over my suitcase. Call the police? Did you hear that? What did she say? She must be from out of town. She still wants to scare us with this. The other side wasn't afraid at all. Call the police right now. I want to see what tricks you can come up with. I stepped back, trying to find a chance to escape. The people opposite saw my intention and directly blocked my way back. Damn bitch. You still want to run? Seeing that his thick arm was about to touch my neck, I was so scared that I almost collapsed to the ground. I closed my eyes and hugged my head, but I didn't receive the expected punches and kicks. Hearing a muffled groan, I opened my eyes. The three men just now were subdued by a group of plainclothes policemen. The policeman next to them was putting on handcuffs and complaining. You guys are in charge of the homestays on this street, right? You've been complained about 800 times. We've been staking you out for so long. And we finally caught you. Leon, you just got off the plane and caught a big fish. You're really amazing. The so-called Ryan was exactly the Ryan I saw on the plane in the morning. He was looking at me with a worried expression on his face. I lowered my head and remained silent. Ryan. What do you say? You guys take the suspects back first. I'll take care of the aftermath. After everyone left, Ryan stood quietly by the side. I was gasping for breath on the ground, and the extreme fear made me unable to hold back my tears. Why am I always so unlucky? Blake doesn't like me. And Nathan doesn't like me either. Even the homestay I randomly found is a shady one. Is it true that no one will ever like me? Am I really bad at everything? I chose this store after looking at the recommendations on a certain platform. I didn't expect it to be a really shady place. No wonder it's in such a remote location. Ryan was suddenly flustered. He took out a tissue and helped me wipe my tears. And even his voice was trembling. Jocelyn, I don't know why you think like this. But to me, you're my lucky star. He looked into my eyes seriously. The shady homestays in City D have existed for a long time. But they have insiders in the police station. Every time the police come, they hide immediately. And we can never catch them. If it weren't for me following you, this case would have become an unsolved mystery. I chuckled. So, I'd done a great job? Seeing me smile. The expression on his face also relaxed. Of course. It's a top-notch achievement. Also, having Jocelyn upset. Jocelyn, what you said just now is wrong. You're not annoying at all. For example, Leo, Gadenska. He likes you very much. When he said this, Ryan didn't even dare to look into my eyes. Looking at his lips pursed tightly because of nervousness. Something in my heart seemed to loosen. Ryan took me back to the homestay he had booked, and helped me clean the wounds on my body. He lowered his head and apologized to me sincerely. Sorry. I lied. This time, I was sent here by the team. I'm mainly responsible for rectifying the chaotic tourism situation in City D. Running a homestay is just a cover. I watched him carefully apply iodine to me, and couldn't help but say, I can understand. After all, your work needs to be kept confidential. Can you stop applying it to my left leg? I fell on my right leg just now. He hastily picked up the iodine again. Looking at his flustered appearance, I couldn't help but laugh out loud. This person is actually kind of cute. Before leaving, Ryan asked me if I would be willing to help him manage this homestay. I've already bought the store. You don't have to worry about the rent or the utility bills. I'm usually too busy in the team to come here. I need someone to keep an eye on this street for me. Jocelyn, would you do me this favor? Looking into his sincere eyes, I somehow agreed. I don't lack money now. The divorce settlement I got from the Blake family may be just a grain of sand to them. But for me, as long as I don't squander it recklessly, it's enough for me to live a peaceful and smooth life. I managed this homestay and also transformed the first floor into a milk tea shop. By the way, Leo was the taste tester in my store. He would be the first to taste every new product. Ryan doesn't like sweet things. Every time he comes, I would put a glass of lemonade for him. Time passed plainly and richly for 3 years like this. 3 years later, I officially agreed to Ryan and accepted his ring. Leo seems to really like the things I gave him. He hung that safety amulet in the most prominent position of his school bag. And he would tell everyone he met. This was given to me by Jocelyn from the milk tea shop. Do you know Jocelyn? She has a sweet smile. And the milk tea she makes is really delicious. I've never been shown off like this before. It seems that I'm also someone worthy of being valued. On the day I agreed to Ryan, we waited for Leo to finish school together and picked him up. On the way, Ryan and I exchanged a look, and I asked him nervously, Leo, perhaps, would you like Jocelyn to be your mother? Beyond our imagination. He said without hesitation, yes. We were both surprised and curious, and we asked him why. He lowered his head, and it took him a while to say, if Jocelyn becomes my mother, the classmates in my class won't call me a bastard anymore. Ryan and I were both stunned for a while, holding his thin arm. My tears almost welled up in my eyes. I hugged Leo tightly. Sorry, Leo, I didn't take good care of you before. Jocelyn will never let you be wronged again in the future. Leo lowered his head, held my hand tightly, and corrected me in a low voice. Not Jocelyn. It's Mom. I hugged him even tighter, smiling with tears in my eyes. Leo is very smart. It's Mom, not Aunt. I specially signed up for the parents' committee and would speak up in the parents' group from time to time. I want all the parents to know that I'm Leo's mother. In this way, having fulfilled rejection, the children in the class won't call Leo a child without a mother anymore. Sure enough, after a period of time, Leo's complexion improved a lot. After school, he would even invite a few classmates to visit my milk tea shop. He became more and more sunny and even wanted to run for the class monitor. In the morning, he carried his school bag, bounced around, and vowed to win the position of class monitor. At noon, the head teacher suddenly called me, and his voice sounded even more flustered through the phone. Leo's mother. Leo is injured. He got into a fight with his classmate and had a cut on his head. He's being bandaged in the people's hospital now. My heart was pounding with anxiety, but I still tried to control myself and asked about the course of the incident. This matter was strange. Leo was never the kind of child who would take the initiative to provoke others in the class. It's our transfer student. He insisted that Leo was trying to steal his mom from him. The two of them got into an argument and then started fighting. After hanging up the phone, my heart turned cold. In the hospital, Leo had a bandage on his head, but his face was very calm. The moment he saw me enter, his lips trembled, and he suddenly lost his composure. Mom, what Mom? Don't you have any shame? The child next to him, wearing a suit and tie, still wanted to push him, but was stopped by the nurse. The child turned his head, and it was a familiar face. It was Nathan, whom I had raised for 4 years. He looked at Leo with a look of disdain, just like the way he looked at me 4 years ago. Where did this bastard come from? He still dares to steal my mom from me. Turning around, he suddenly threw himself into my arms and shouted excitedly, Mom, I finally found you. Dad said that if we find you this time, we'll take you home and never lose you again. When he said this, I noticed the man beside him. After not seeing him for 3 years, his temperament had become more composed, and the years had smoothed out the arrogant edges of Blake. When Blake saw me, his face showed a moment of excitement. But soon, he controlled his expression. Jocelyn, it's been 3 years. You should have been angry enough by now. The Blake family is willing to give you another chance. Just for the sake of the child. He paused. Let's remarry. As if nothing happened before. Blake made it sound so easy. It was as if the 4 years of grievances I had suffered in the Blake family never existed. In the 2nd year after I married into the Blake family, Grandma Blake passed away. The last person in the world who protected me was gone. No one in the Blake family liked me. Blake's mother had always looked down on me and thought that I had seduced him into bed. She liked Chloe, who was of a similar social status, and mentioned it to me more than once. It's a pity. Our Blake is not fortunate. The women he finds are getting worse and worse. It's normal for Nathan to like Chloe more. After all, even a child can tell who's better and who's worse. Children are my weakness. I was so used to being submissive in front of my mother-in-law that I rarely refuted. From what you said, I thought Nathan was born from Chloe's womb. Could it be that my memory is messed up? Maybe I should ask her tomorrow? Blake's mother was so angry that she trembled and pointed at my nose, scolding me for being shameless. I ignored her. For such a Blake family, Blake told me to just pretend that nothing had happened. Was that even possible? I held Leo in my arms tenderly and comforted him. The little boy had just been scared and didn't even dare to cry out loud. He only dared to sob silently in my arms. I vented my anger on Blake. Blake. It's understandable if the child doesn't know any better. But how can you act so recklessly too? Blake looked at me and Leo, a bit irritated, and took out a cigarette and put it in his mouth. Don't you just want an apology? Now I'm bringing Nathan to apologize to you. What else are you not satisfied with? It was like a reminder and also a warning, Jocelyn. That's enough. If you're being overly sentimental, it will be too much. This person really always acts superior. President Blake. You might have misunderstood something. I raised my hand and showed the ring on my ring finger. I already have a new family. Leo is my child. When we got divorced, I made it very clear we should cut off all ties. Not only with you but also with Nathan. Blake's face turned deathly pale in an instant. And he didn't even notice the cigarette ash falling on his finger. I pulled Leo and walked out the door. But when I was at the door, I couldn't help but turn around. He looked at me infuriately, having second thoughts. Jocelyn, once you go out this door, there's no turning back. I shook my head, and still couldn't help but remind him, smoke less in front of the child. After saying that, I held Leo and left straight away. In the evening, facing Ryan, I didn't know how to explain the sudden appearance of my ex-husband and child. The scar on Leo's head, that past that I didn't want to bring up again. One thing after another, they crushed my heart. But Ryan didn't ask anything. He just held me in his arms. He said in a very gentle tone that I could cry if I wanted to. Jocelyn, you must have had a tough time all these years. It's my fault. I liked you when we were in college. I was going to join the army at that time. So I didn't dare to say it. If I had said it earlier, you wouldn't have been delayed for so long. I leaned on his shoulder, tears streaming down my face. During all these years in the Blake family, Blake and Nathan had been indifferent. Chloe regarded me as her enemy, thinking that I had stolen everything from her. I never expected that after all these years. It would be Ryan who would tell me, "You've had a tough time all these years." Seeing that I was crying so sadly, he gently patted my back. Jocelyn. Actually, I was mentally prepared before coming here. I will respect whatever choice you make. I know you've liked Blake for many years. If you go back to the Blake family, it would be okay too. I gently punched him in the chest. What nonsense are you talking about? He lowered his eyes. I don't want to force you to stay because of my selfishness. How do you know that I don't want to stay? I choked up. I clearly don't want to leave at all. He held my fist, and the smile on his face reached his ears. Then don't leave. By the way, we can also think about something more long-term. I didn't understand. What? Don't you want to give our Leo a little brother or sister? My face turned red. And I scolded him. You rascal. We had a playful night together. When I woke up, I supported my waist, and my face was glowing. I heard someone knocking on the door. When I opened it, it was Nathan standing there alone. He was carrying a school bag and had tears in his eyes. Mom, my dad doesn't want me anymore. Yesterday, it wasn't just that guy with the surname Yao who got hurt. My arm was also injured. He turned sideways to show me the bandage wrapped around his arm. I used to be unable to bear Nathan's tears the most. As long as he cried in front of me, I couldn't help but hold him and coax him, and sing him a lullaby. But at this moment, there was only indifference on my face. Nathan, I'm not your mother anymore. If you're really feeling bad, go to your dad. Your dad won't ignore you. He sobbed softly. Mom, I was wrong. Chloe actually doesn't like me at all. Will you really not forgive me? I closed the door and called Leo to get up for breakfast. I didn't look at Nathan again. Nathan deliberately transferred to Leo's class. He tried to grab the amulet on Leo's school bag. Leo wouldn't give it to him. So they fought. Leo held that shabby safety amulet and showed it to me as if it were a precious treasure. I got it back. I don't want to give away the thing that Mom gave me to anyone else. I patted his head and told him to eat breakfast quickly, or he would be late for school. As for the safety amulet, to avoid any more conflicts, I replaced it with a sachet. The safety amulet is dirty. You'll be laughed at if you take it to school. Leo said. I'm not afraid of being laughed at. But he still obediently listened to me. I took him to school. As soon as we went out, I saw that Nathan was still at the door, with his head lowered and refusing to leave. I pretended not to see him. But Leo opened his big eyes and looked back at him several times. After I walked a certain distance with Leo, Nathan slowly followed. He always kept a distance that was neither too far nor too close to us. At the school gate, I raised my voice and reminded Leo, if anyone bullies you at school, call me or your dad. Your dad is a policeman and is very good at fighting. Don't be afraid. Leo nodded obediently. On the other side, Nathan secretly glanced at us several times. When I looked over again, he quickly withdrew his gaze and looked down at his toes. I thought Nathan would give up on this. After all, like his father, he was the kind of person who was arrogant and thought highly of himself. He always got what he wanted. And no one ever went against his will. Later, I realized that I had underestimated this child of my own flesh and blood. From that day on, as soon as school was over, he followed Leo. When Leo came to my milk tea shop to do his homework, he would find a corner nearby and read a book by himself. When Leo invited his classmates to my shop to have milk tea, Nathan would hold a glass of cola and sit quietly by the side. The classmates were all puzzled. Leo, why does this transfer student follow you every day? Leo said sullenly, I don't know. You can ask him. Nathan sat there silently, but his ears perked up. In a corner that no one noticed, Leo quietly pulled my sleeve and asked me, Mom, can you not go with Nathan? He said his family has a big villa and a swimming pool, but we don't have any of those at home. If you leave, will you not want me and Dad anymore? I put down the hand that was washing the tea sets and gently pinched his face. What are you thinking? It's you and Dad who gave me a new life. I won't leave. Leo skillfully jumped into my arms and coquettously said that Mom was the best. I picked him up and spun him around. But out of the corner of my eye, I inadvertently saw Nathan at the door. He looked at us with a calm expression, and his eyes were as dark as if shrouded in thick fog. It was completely unlike the expression a child of his age should have. At first, he threw tantrums and shouted and screamed in my milk tea shop. Later, he realized that this method didn't work. Not everyone was like the people in the Blake family who would tolerate his bad temper unconditionally. He started following behind Leo like a little tail that couldn't be shaken off. Until one day, Leo disappeared. On the day Leo went missing, I didn't think much of it at first. He often went to play at his classmates' houses after school, and it wasn't uncommon for him to come home half an hour late. An hour had passed since the school ended, and I asked a few questions in the parents' group. Leo didn't come to our house today. A mother seemed to remember something. He seems to have a good relationship with the transfer student. My child said that they left together as soon as school was over today. My hand holding the phone froze. And I suddenly thought of something. I didn't see Nathan after school today either. I panicked and urgently called Ryan. He also became anxious. But he still tried to stay calm. Don't panic. It hasn't been long. They can't have gone far. I'll go and check the surveillance cameras right away. I quickly put on my coat and went to the street to look for them. I hadn't walked a few steps when I ran into Nathan. He was playing with an ornament in his hand, which was the sachet I had hung on Leo's school bag. I felt cold all over. I almost had to lean against the wall before I dared to speak tremblingly. Nathan, what did you do to Leo? Where is he now? Nathan didn't answer me but looked straight into my eyes. Mom, if Leo is dead, will you only like me? Although it was a question, his tone was very certain. I panicked and grabbed his collar. Tell me where Leo is. Hurry up and say it. He said softly in a coquettish tone. Mom, come back with me. Let's go back to City A. I promise that as long as you go back, Leo will come back obediently. He stood on the street corner with a fierce expression, showing a kind of cruel innocence. I couldn't control my tears. Nathan, give Leo back to me. Okay? I cried loudly, wailing. I remembered when I first met Leo. He was so small. For a whole 3 years, I watched him grow up little by little, and gradually become more and more sunny. He was a polite and good child, sincere to everyone, and no one would want to harm him. If it weren't for me, he wouldn't have had any trouble at all. It was all my fault. I was crying so sadly when I suddenly felt a pair of small hands pat my shoulder. I turned around, and it was Leo shrinking his shoulders. Mom, having fulfilled land sigh. I'm sorry. Blake beside him nodded faintly. Sorry to trouble you. I ignored him and went straight to Leo's side to check his limbs. Are you hurt anywhere? Were you bullied? Leo burst into tears. I went to eat ice cream with Uncle. I'm sorry. Mom. I shouldn't have eaten the ice cream. The heart that had been in my throat finally settled down. Before I could speak, I heard Nathan's tone behind me full of hatred. Why did you save him? Why did you ruin my plan? You just needed to hide him away. Obviously. You also want Mom to come back. Blake just looked at them indiferently. Frowning, Nathan, aren't you ashamed? Get in the car and go back. This isn't the place for you. I had no intention of watching the argument between the father and son anymore. I just held Leo in my arms. This was my precious one that I had lost and then regained. Nathan was roughly pushed into the car by the bodyguard, but at the last second, he broke free from the restraint and ran into my embrace. There were tears streaming down his face. Mom, you don't want me. And you don't want Dad either. Right? For the first time in so many days. I got close to Nathan. I wiped the tears from the corners of his eyes and told him seriously, Nathan, this place isn't suitable for you. You should go back to the Blake family. He hung his head and got into the car, looking back every few steps. He looked outside through the car window, and I couldn't see his expression. Blake quietly smoked the last cigarette beside me and said indiferently, I'll take him back to City A. I promise that this kind of thing won't happen again in the future. I nodded, taking it as a greeting. He seemed to want to say something more. The next second, Ryan ran over anxiously. I saw you on the surveillance just now. How are you? Are you not injured? Seeing me shake my head, he looked at Leo. How is Leo? Only when he saw that we were all okay did he heave a sigh of relief. Blake turned around and left. Later, Nathan never appeared in our sight again. I believe that Blake will keep an eye on him. Scars can gradually fade over time, but they shouldn't be forgotten because of time. Nathan once asked me if I had never liked Dad. How could I not like him? He was the one whose ID photo I couldn't bear to let get dusty and wanted to keep it as a precious treasure. He was the one who amazed me throughout my girlhood. But I understand that if it's not a good fit, it's not a good fit. What's missed shouldn't be forced to stay. I had always wanted to have a wedding with Ryan. But Nathan had been lingering in our house and refused to leave. So it wasn't convenient to hold the wedding. Now that he was gone, Ryan couldn't wait to start planning. At that time, Leo can be our flower boy. What do you think of letting him sing a song on the stage? This kid is timid and needs more practice. Do you think I should wear a military uniform or a suit at the wedding? Which one do you think looks better? What kind of bridal bouquet should we choose? Pink or red? Looking at the chatty man beside me, I couldn't help but laugh. I didn't expect Ryan to pay so much attention to details. Of course, he said proudly. The wedding is definitely something to be taken seriously. We should set an example for this kid Leo. I was amused by him and gently punched him in the chest while in his arms. But he caught my hand. He looked at me tenderly. Jocelyn, when will our family welcome a new member? Before I could answer, he gently kissed me. Leon's teammates liked me very much. At the wedding, they gathered around me one after another. Sister-in-law, was it you who provided the clues about those 3 big bosses at the shady hotels before? Thanks to sister-in-law, we received the highest year-end bonus ever. I thought of something. The case hasn't been closed yet. Can you still get the year-end bonus? One of the teammates looked a bit puzzled. You mean the case of the homestays? Ryan was very decisive and closed the case in just 1 month. I was surprised. Didn't you say that the street of homestays still needed to be observed further? Sister-in-law, you're joking. With our Ryan around, who would dare to cause trouble? Yeah. The case was closed a long time ago. Now, how dare the homestays act recklessly? Realizing something, I poked Ryan's chest with my elbow. So this guy's request for me to keep an eye on the street of homestays was fake from the start. What asking me to help keep an eye on it? He clearly had his eyes on me. Ryan's face turned red all the way to the roots of his ears. He knocked on his cup with a straight face. Just focus on eating and don't talk too much. The atmosphere reached its climax the moment Leo presented flowers to me. The little boy was wearing a formal suit, with a pure and sincere look in his eyes. Mom, adding fulfilled my sacher. I will love you for my whole life. Ryan and I looked at each other and smiled. Then hugged him in our arms. Blake has never married Chloe. At first, he said that he was afraid Nath and wouldn't get used to it and that they should wait a bit longer. And later? Later. He just kept delaying it. But it was hard to say exactly why. Chloe seemed to have noticed it too. The day she left the Blake family, she dragged her luggage and walked past him infuriately. Blake, Blake. You will always only like the people you can't have. Blake was taken aback for a moment. His hand trembled, and the cigarette ash fell on his clothes. He thought of that person from many years ago. Did he like her? That was a ridiculous question. As a favorite of heaven, how could he like the stain in his life? Jocelyn was a very ordinary woman, with an ordinary appearance and ordinary pursuits. Before and after becoming a mother, she was always so weak and insignificant. Blake had never thought that such a woman could cause any trouble. But unexpectedly, she brought up the topic of divorce. When the butler carefully conveyed the other party's idea of divorce, Blake just thought it was ridiculous. Divorce? Where would she go? As an orphan. Besides the Blake family. Where else could she go? Blake flipped through the documents infuriately. Just let her be. If she wants to leave, she can. But the custody of Nath and can only be with the Blake family. The young mistress said she doesn't want the custody. The person on the other side was stunned for a moment and added. She also asked if she could get more money by giving up the right of visitation. Blake cleared his throat. Just do as the lawyer said. Blake didn't try to keep her. And his reaction to the topic of divorce was also indifferent. Much like his attitude in the marriage. However, that afternoon, he spent a full 4 hours looking at a simple contract. As soon as he got home, Nathan was throwing a tantrum and kept asking where she had gone. Blake was surprised. Who is she? The butler lowered his head and said it was the young mistress. He suddenly got angry and slapped Nathan's butt several times. Can't you speak properly? Nathan sobbed and asked him while crying, Dad, where is Mom? Looking at Nathan's confused and helpless expression, he suddenly had a very bad idea. Your mom doesn't want you anymore. And she doesn't want me either. Nathan was crying loudly behind him, but he suddenly felt a kind of self-abusive relief. You see, Jocelyn, the person you hurt the most isn't me at all. After finding out that his ex-wife was in City D, Nathan cried and insisted on going to find his mom. Blake was pestered so much that he had no choice but to let him go. But the moment he saw the new ring on his ex-wife's hand, his mind went completely blank. He almost fled from her house, leaving Nathan alone to pester her. Someone would regularly report Nathan's every move. He saw that this kid had lured away Jocelyn's new son. Blake couldn't help but get involved in this matter. But when Jocelyn was crying the most pitifully, he helped hand over the child. There was no reason for it. It was just because he sadly realized that he couldn't bear to see Jocelyn's tears. After coming back, Nathan was acting like he was going to die every day. Blake passed by his bedside and just asked infuriately, Do you think you're really great? And why didn't you bring her back? These words weren't meant for Nathan. They were meant for Blake himself. Unexpectedly, Nathan had grown up and learned to talk back. Dad, when you were mocking me, did you ever think you were also the one who was abandoned? Blake was stunned for a moment and suddenly realized. Jocelyn, you're really amazing. And every day of the future, he would be accompanied by regret and lied the rest of his life feeling bored. His subordinates sent him secretly taken photos at Jocelyn's wedding. The family of 3 was hugging together, making others envious. He was that other person. Blake put the photos in the compartment he usually didn't tears and picked up the next work report to find faults. Just pretend that nothing had happened. The end.